Now, this affects everybody.
Huh? What?
Absolutely everybody. Black people more so than other groups of demographics, but definitely everybody.
Me too.
Because I really need you to hear this one carefully, because this isn't about one cop. This isn't about one city. This is about the federal government, our federal government, your federal government, deliberately dismantling the only mechanism that exists to force police department to stop unaliving people, especially Black people. No protest broke out when this happened. No hashtags trended. Most people missed it entirely, and that is exactly how they wanted it. We are talking about Trump's DOJ's termination of consent decrees and pattern on practice investigation.
Okay.
The legal tools that were the last line of federal accountability standing between Black communities, white communities, Hispanic communities, Asian communities, and unchecked police violence. But again, we know who it affects the most, okay? If America catches a cold, we catch a dying flu, so to speak. We need to really get into this one. Let me break this down from the foundation, because the language of the police is designed to be boring enough that you stop reading. Don't stop reading. A consent decree is a legal agreement enforced by a federal court in which a police department agrees to specific reforms. The use of force policy changes, de-escalation training requirements, bias accountability measures, independent oversight, because the DOJ investigated that department and found a systematic pattern of constitutional violation. Most of them, when you look on videotape, I'm pretty sure these are the bad apples of the bunch, because not all police are bad. I believe that majority of police is good. But nevertheless, they don't even know the law and constitution themselves. I'm pretty sure they had a test somewhere. But I really want you guys to think about what that means. Not one bad cop, not one bad incident, a pattern documented. Federal court agreed it was unconstitutional, and the decree was the settlement. The thing that said you will change or you will be held in contempt of a federal court. Cities that have operated under consent decrees included LA, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Ferguson, Cleveland, Baltimore, Louisville, New Orleans, Minneapolis, Seattle, Portland, and some others. Notice what those cities have in common. Significant Black population, a history of documented police violence against the Black community, against Black residents, and federal courts that agreed that the violence was systematic. They agreed that it was. Consent decrees did not end police brutality. They created friction. They created oversight. They created consequences, because in 2025 and this year, the Trump administration has been systematically killing them. Here's a timeline, because in 2017, Trump's first term, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions issued a memo directing the DOJ to review all existing consent decrees and pull back from new pattern or practice investigation, calling them damaging to police morale and local autonomy. Biden reversed this in 2021. The DOJ reopened investigations. New decrees were put in place and or expanded. Minneapolis was investigated after George Floyd's murder. Louisville was investigated after Breonna Taylor's killing. Then January of last year happened. In the first weeks of the second Trump administration, the DOJ moved to suspend, pause, and abandon multiple active consent decrees negotiations. The Minneapolis Agreement, one of the most comprehensive police reform frameworks in American history, that actually won after the George Floyd murder, that was target for rollback. And the Louisville DOJ agreement, entered after Breonna Taylor killing, faced federal pullback. Pattern of practice investigations launched under Biden were quietly shelved. The justification, local control. Police morale. Oh, the police morale is down because they're getting trumped up on charges because all of the illegal dealings they're dealing in. Government overreach, they stated. And the translation behind that, we are removing the referees from the game. No more federal oversight, so you guys can just govern yourselves, do as you want. That's why, in my opinion, oversight is very important, because we're going to call out the bad actors there, and they're going to be consequences for those actions. This is not theoretical. We have historical data on this. A landmark study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science found that cities under DOJ consent decrees saw a statistically significant reduction in police killings by 27%.
Really?
On average, during the period of this oversight. When oversight in it, those reductions did not hold. 27%. Think about how many people are alive right now because of those numbers. Now think about what happens to that number when no oversight, no accountability to the actual framework, and an administration that has made it very clear is views that police power is something to expand and not constrain. Mapping police violence data tell us that in 2025, police killed over 1,200 people in the United States. Black Americans were killed at nearly twice the rate of white Americans. Again, still and always. Without consent decrees, this is no federal mechanism forcing reform. And we need an anti-hate crime bill that includes the police on some regards, and we need qualified immunity to be wiped away.
Fact.
Without pattern of practice investigations, there is no federal mechanism documenting the violation. The only tools left are lawsuits that are expensive, slow, individual and local politics, which in too many cities where the same city councils that have protected these departments for decades. So we know where that's going to go. And a loop-de-loop, absolutely nowhere. They don't have to shoot you in public if nobody's watching anymore. I really need you to understand the bigger picture here. Consent decrees and pattern or practice investigations are not the only civil rights tools being dismantled in the same period that the Trump DOJ has. They gutted the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ, reducing staff and investigative capacity by double digits. They have reversed federal oversight of school districts that have been under desegregation orders dating back decades. Now, again, in some regards, because of the elimination of DEI requirements from federal contracting, removing accountability mechanisms for workplace discrimination has harmed some Black people in some regards. Not the majority, because again, DEI on a large scale for the majority of our populace has not benefited us. We already know who has benefited. They've shut down the DOJ's environmental justice program, which tracked pollution disproportionately dumped in Black and brown communities. Look up Elon Musk and a lot of the factories that he's built near and in Black communities and how they have a lot of, contamination runoff, allegedly. But I also want to double down on the eradication of consent decrees. I want you guys to look at this, okay? It states here that the Trump Department of Justice have actively moved to terminate or roll back federal consent decrees, court enforceable agreements aimed at reforming police departments, okay? And it goes on to state that this initiative, which began in early of 25, also includes closing standard and practice investigation into law enforcement agencies in Phoenix, Trenton, and other cities, aiming to reduce federal oversight of local police. And here are some of the targeted cities that you see: Minneapolis, Louisville, Kentucky, Phoenix, Trenton, New Jersey, Mount Vernon, New York, Memphis, Tennessee, Oklahoma. Unleashing law enforcement. Proponents, including the Fraternal Order Police, argue that these decrees are ineffective and undermine police, saying they want to unleash officers to fight crime. How does it stop you from fighting crime?
I'm confused.
How does it stop police? Someone in the comment section, please tell me how this stopped them from fighting crime. Or should they just eliminate qualified immunity? That's what we should really be aiming for. Because again, eliminating consent decrees is a step in the right direction, no less, but it's not the know all be all. We need to wipe away qualified immunity and have them to have insurers. Because again, when you start involving money, that's what all Americans, because we live in a capitalist society, that's what all Americans are going to truly understand. Even police officers that are not going to be backed by their unions or any sort of police departments. Because again, we understand that these unions and these police departments are funded by the people. So if a citizen have a civil lawsuit against a police officer because the untimely death of one of their family members, and that police department, by the way of the city, fork out $10 million, that's just your tax dollars.
What is this game?
Stop having me, stop having the city to use states to use our own tax dollars, whether it be property tax, sales tax, income tax, wherever the tax money is coming from, to pay for the ill-advised actions of a demonstrous police officer in the unaliving of one of our family members, one of your family members. This goes for everybody.
Lordy, that would be really bad.
Okay, but again, more so Black Americans than any other group. But I know there's been white people who've been killed by the police who was not, armed, so to speak, and other communities as well. So this affects us all. This is not a series of unrelated policy decisions. This is a coordinated unwinding of the entire federal civil rights architecture built over 60 years, brick by brick, memo by memo, executive order by executive order. And it is happening with almost no national coverage. This is what they want.
Here we go again.
But here's the good news. And there is some good news. Some states have moved to fill the void. California, Illinois, New York, and Minnesota have all enacted or expanded state-level police accountability laws that do not depend on federal enforcement. California's Racial and Identity Profiling Act mandates data collection and reporting. Illinois' Safety Act overhauls use of force standards. These are imperfect, but there are something.
What?
Organizations like the ACLU, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Mapping Police Violence, and local police accountability coalitions are fighting case by case, city by city to preserve oversight frameworks without federal support.
Wait, what?
But here's the honest truth, ladies and gentlemen. State level protection is only as strong as the state government in power, and local accountability is only as strong as organized community pressure, which means, in some regards, the fight comes back to us every single time.
Hypocrisy, my friend.
Demand that your city council and mayor publish a full transparency report on use of force incidents. Here are the solutions, or at least some, as a strategy. You may agree, you may disagree. Have civilian complaints and other discipline records. If your city was under a consent decree and has been lifted or paused, demand to know what replaced it. Nothing is not an answer. Oh, well, when they wiped away consent decrees, we really didn't have a backfill. We didn't have anything in place, even though we knew about this, to backfill the reporting oversight committee internally to the state from a state perspective, from a state law. Why not? These are the politicians. We need to get the hell out of there and pull in politicians who want to do things on a state level if the federal government's not going to do it. As President Trump is reducing the amount of coverage and oversight of the federal government, that means state legislators need to do something about it. In some regards, I can see people supporting the NAACP if they're really fighting for this, the Legal Defense Fund, the ACLU, and mapping police violence financially, if they're able. Because in some regards, some of these organizations are doing things from a litigation standpoint and documentation work that the federal government has abated. So again, know the difference between a city where state level politicians accountability protections and ones that don't have and ones that are without. If you're in a state that hasn't passed meaningful reform, that is a legislative target for the 2026 midterm elections. When the DOJ is not watching, we have to watch. We have to document, film, and report. The community is the oversight when the government refuses to be. Vote in your state's attorney general race like your life depends on it, because for too many Black Americans, it literally does. The AG is the state level enforcer. The office determines whether your state fills the federal void or becomes a replica of it. They can kill the consent decree. They cannot kill the demand for accountability that lives in it. Okay? Because when I look at, again, this site right here, ourvoicevote.org, police accountability showing the amount of people that the police has unalived since 2015 to 2024. Those are the latest reports. And out of that, I'm pretty sure this number is a little bit higher than this, but nevertheless, these are the numbers I could verify. 309 unarmed Black Americans have been killed. And I had this information right here that we're roughly 13 to 14% of the population. The database below tracked every police killing since 2015, including circumstances, officer charges, and case outcomes. And you guys can look at the complete, searchable database that the Washington Post have. I also have a link to Mapping Police Violence, as well as other notable cases that we guys are familiar with, like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Fidelio Castillo, Tamir Rice, Botham Jean, Atiana Jefferson, Elijah McCain, And just so we can document these things and have a rolling database. And that's why I'm stating that if the state, district attorney, the state attorney don't have laws or legislation that are going to be replaced, if consent decrees are wiped away throughout the entire U.S., then there's something that needs to be done. But it's time out for this. And I just want to say this very plainly. It affects everybody. It affects Black Americans more so than anybody. But again, there's been other races of people that this has affected where police have unalived their loved ones, their family members, their friends without any justification and without them garnering any sort of weapon. So again, if you really want to make change, it seems as though that on the federal level, hands off. They're doing absolutely any and everything that they want. But on the state level, you can really exercise power. And that's exactly what we need to do.